The rain had turned the orchard earth to sludge, thick and dark as oil. Deputy Sarah Vance didn't mind. Her K-9 partner, Duke, was already belly-deep in the mud near the edge of the CEO's private estate, tail stiff, nose locked on something buried. Just yards away, Charles Halden, billionaire, philanthropist, and local kingmaker, stood under an umbrella, smirking. "He's just playing in the dirt," he said. But Duke didn't play. Not when he growled like that. And when his paws hit wood, something changed. Halden stopped smiling. The wind tangled in the orchard's trees, like fingers clawing for breath. Sarah Vance zipped her jacket higher and scanned the gray horizon. Rows of apple trees arched down the slope in stiff lines, their leaves soaked and sagging. Beyond them stood the house, Halden's mansion, wide and glassy like a lie that didn't blink. Duke's paws sloshed them up beside her, his ears flat, his whole body stiff with purpose. He wasn't sniffing aimlessly. He was tracking. "You're wasting your time," Charles Halden called out, his voice syrupy behind them. "The dog's muddying up my orchard." Sarah ignored him. Halden was the kind of man who thought every conversation was performance, and he was always the lead. Today he wore a monogrammed raincoat, spotless despite the storm. A black SUV idled behind him, the driver hidden behind tinted glass. The CEO's estate manager, Jules, lingered near the gate, tapping her foot but saying nothing. Duke stopped. Sarah's boot sucked into the ground as she crouched beside him. His nose was buried at the base of a half-rotted tree. Bark peeled away like dead skin. The dog let out a deep, low growl. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd heard that sound only 3 times before. Once on the body of a drowned girl, once near a broken crib in the woods, and once in a barn where a family of 3 had been sealed behind drywall. It was not a sound you ignored. Duke started digging. Halden laughed. "Aren't you supposed to have a warrant before tearing up private land?" His tone was light, but something behind it cracked. Sarah didn't answer. Her badge gave her enough leeway for the search, especially given the call that came the night before. Anonymous, static-laced, barely intelligible. Check Halden's orchard. Buried it himself. 2 years ago. At the time, Sarah was halfway through a bottle and still trying not to text her ex. But the call chilled her. It wasn't what the voice said. It was how. Flat. Broken. Like someone who'd already seen the aftermath. She'd driven out alone this morning, knowing it was a gamble. But Duke didn't gamble. Duke pointed. And now, Duke was clawing faster. "I said that's enough." Halden snapped. His boots squelched closer. "There's nothing." Thump. Wood. Sarah's pulse lurched. She knelt beside the hole, brushing back the loosened mud. A hard surface emerged. Old planks. Rotted nails. A box. No, not just a box. A coffin-sized crate. Handmade. Duke stepped back, whined. Sarah stood up slowly. "Call in a forensic team," she said to no one in particular. "This is a burial." Halden's face drained of color, but only for a second. "That box has been there since the orchard was planted. Probably fertilizer equipment. Or junk. My father ran this land for decades. He buried all kinds of crap." Sarah locked eyes with him. "It's a burial, Mr. Halden." The smirk flickered. By the time the crime scene tech arrived, the rain had stopped, but the sky stayed sullen. 2 unmarked trucks pulled up alongside the gate. A handful of deputies, the coroner, and a muddy generator followed. Sarah stood near the perimeter, arms folded, watching the team cordon off the dig site. Halden had retreated to the porch of his glass monstrosity, phone glued to his ear, voice tight behind double-paned windows. He was calling lawyers. Sarah didn't care. The crate came up slow. The wood cracked apart with the effort, and the smell hit first. Sour and meaty, the stink of rot that clung to nostrils and wouldn't leave. Someone gagged. Even the techs hesitated. Inside the crate, there was plastic, a tarp, zip-tied. They peeled it back. The orchard went silent. The body was curled. Female, late 20s, maybe. Decomposition had taken most identifiers. Face bloated, skin waxy, but her hands were visible. Small, delicate. Clean nails. Someone had placed a necklace between her palms. A locket. Gold. Sarah crouched and reached for it with gloved fingers. Inside, 2 pictures. One of a woman, one of a little boy, faded but intact. Deputy Reese knelt beside her. Jesus. Do a match, Sarah said. Fast. They didn't need a name yet. The face was burned into Sarah's memory now. So was the way Halden refused to look at it. Back in the cruiser, Sarah pulled up the county's missing persons records from 2 years ago. There weren't many women who'd vanished in that time frame. Fewer still who matched the build. The locket narrowed it further. Amelia Trant, 29, kindergarten teacher. Disappeared without a trace one summer night after visiting her boyfriend's property outside town. Suspected domestic, no charges filed. Boyfriend, Derek Cross. Farmhand, worked seasonally. But the orchard Amelia had gone missing from belonged to Halden Estate Holdings. Sarah didn't wait for backup. She strode up the mansion steps and rang the bell. Halden opened the door, cool and composed. Barely a man whose orchard had just vomited up a corpse. You said the crate was from your father's time, she said. He nodded once. That orchard wasn't even here 2 years ago. Silence. Amelia Trant, she said flatly. Does that name mean anything to you? Halden's jaw clicked. I've donated to her family's foundation. I didn't know her personally. You employed Derek Cross. She visited him here. She went missing afterward. That's a terrible coincidence. Is it? His smile returned. The kind men wear when they think they can bluff. I didn't kill her, Deputy. Sarah didn't blink. Funny, I didn't say she was murdered. Halden blinked. Once, then twice. You've had a good run, she said quietly. But dogs don't lie. That night, Sarah sat on her porch, Duke at her feet. The sky had finally cleared, moonlight catching on the muddy streaks in his fur. She was cold, tired, and sick of the political firestorm that was about to follow. Charles Halden was too big for this town. Too clean. Too powerful. But all it took was one phone call, one woman buried in the wrong orchard, and one stubborn dog with a nose for secrets. She scratched behind Duke's ears. He leaned in, soft and warm. Good boy, she whispered. Inside, her phone buzzed. A text from Reese. We ID'd her. Definitely Amelia. But here's the twist. Lividity's wrong. She didn't die here. Sarah stared. Then came another. She was moved. Someone else buried her. The second autopsy report hit Sarah like a punch in the ribs. Amelia Tran had died from blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. No drugs. No sexual assault. No defensive wounds. Just one clean, fatal blow and a quiet burial. The lividity marks confirmed what Reese said. Amelia had died elsewhere, her body stored cold, then dumped later into the crate. Someone wanted her preserved. Hidden, but not lost. Sarah sat in the sheriff's office, elbows on the cluttered desk. Light from the window casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, Duke paced near the squad car, restless, still keyed up from the orchard, like he knew it wasn't over, like something else still stank beneath the surface. Halden hadn't been arrested yet. The sheriff was stalling, citing politics, jurisdiction, the board of supervisors, everything but the truth. No one wanted to pick a fight with the man who practically owned half the county. Sarah didn't care. She reached for her coffee, but didn't drink. She stared instead at the file she'd opened again and again, Amelia's case. Her soft face in the school ID photo. Her last known call, a voicemail to her sister, never returned. And the final, ignored thread, a note in her handwriting found in her desk drawer. He said no one would believe me. She headed back to the orchard after sunset. This time, she came alone. No text, no tape, just Duke. The crate had been removed. The hole was still there, tarp stretched over the top, pinned by rebar. But it wasn't the grave she was interested in. It was what Duke had done before the dig started. Circling, halting, then darting to another tree 10 yards away. Sarah brought him to that same spot. Go on, she said. He sniffed, whined, scratched once at the base of the tree, and then sat. That's what he did when the scent was faint. Faded. Old. Sarah's pulse quickened. Someone else had stood here. Waited here. And then, Deputy? She flinched. The voice came from the fence. Flashlight beam bobbing. It was Jules, Halden's estate manager. She stepped through the gap in the orchard gate, flashlight in one hand, raincoat too light for the night air. Her eyes were cautious. Her hands empty. "I saw your car," she said. "Figured you'd come back." Sarah stayed quiet. Jules came closer, stopping just a few feet from Duke. He didn't bark, just watched. "I didn't bury anyone," Jules said, "but I think I know who did." They sat in the warmth of Sarah's cruiser. Jules stared at her hands while Duke dozed in the back seat. "I started working for Halden 5 years ago," she began. He'd just inherited the land. The orchard was part of some investment plan, build the appearance of local roots. He needed someone who knew how to run a property like this. "You were close to him," Sarah said. Jules gave a dry smile. "Close enough to know when he was lying." "Did you know Amelia Trant?" "Only from a distance. Pretty. Quiet. Too gentle for him." "For who?" Sarah asked. "Halden." Jules paused. Then, "No. Derek, the boyfriend. He and Halden had an arrangement." Sarah frowned. "What kind of arrangement?" "Derek worked the orchard. Yeah, but he did other things too. Things Halden needed done without paperwork. Without questions. Are you saying he buried Amelia?" "No," Jules said. "I'm saying he didn't." Back at the station, Sarah reopened Derek Cross's file. He'd disappeared 6 months after Amelia, officially listed as moved out of state. But there were no forwarding addresses, no employment records, no digital trail. It was like he'd just vanished. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. 2 missing people. 1 buried. 1 erased. She pulled her phone and dialed a number for Derek's last emergency contact, his cousin Trent. The line rang 5 times before someone answered. Voice groggy. "Wary." "Yeah." "This is Deputy Sarah Vance with the county sheriff's office. You related to Derek Cross?" "Was. Haven't seen him in years." "When did you last hear from him?" Maybe 2 years back." "He called me. Said he was scared. Said he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to." "What did he mean?" "I asked him that. He just said, 'The CEO's not what he seems.' Then he hung up. That was it." Sarah's blood chilled. "Did he say where he was?" "Only that he wasn't going to be around much longer." Sarah stared out the station window into the night. Duke was back on his feet, ears twitching. She grabbed her jacket. The back roads out to the Halden property were dark, slick with recent rain. Sarah didn't take the main entrance. She followed a dirt access lane that bordered the orchard, barely visible unless you knew it was there. She parked in the trees, killed the headlights, and listened. Crickets. Wind. A low hum from the mansion's generators. Then a light. Faint. In the back, shed near the greenhouse. She let Duke out. They moved quiet. Through the orchard, past the rotting trees. The shed door was cracked. Inside, concrete floor. Tools. Shelves. And a tarp. Sarah pulled it aside. A second crate. Her stomach dropped. This one hadn't been buried. Just sealed. And inside, bones. Animal? Maybe. But the long femur said otherwise. And wedged between them, a rusted belt-buckle engraved with a name. D. Cross. Sarah stood in stunned silence. He hadn't run. He'd been kept close. Erased. Behind her, Duke growled. The shotgun racked before she turned. "Halden." No coat this time. Just a shirt soaked through with sweat, face pale, lips tight. "You should have stopped," he said. Sarah didn't move. "You killed him." He didn't answer. "You used him to bury Amelia. Then you buried him." Still no answer. "He saw you do it, didn't he? Saw you hit her, cover her body." He panicked. "And you couldn't let him talk." Halden raised a gun. Sarah didn't flinch. "You're not going to shoot a cop in your own shed." Halden's hands trembled. "I built all of this. All of it. You think anyone's going to care what a dead orchard girl and a dropout farmhand mean now?" Sarah's voice lowered. "They're going to care what AK-9 dug up." Halden's finger twitched, then dropped. The gun hit the floor. The arrest was quiet. No press. No lights. Just Sarah's cruiser rolling into the station. Halden cuffed in the back. Duke resting beside him. Mud-streaked, panting, unblinking. Reese met her at the door. "You found him." "Yeah," Sarah said. "I found them both." Later that night, Sarah stood in her backyard. Duke stretched out in the grass. She tossed a stick. He didn't chase it, just laid his head down and closed his eyes. The orchard had been sealed off for good, the crates taken, the truth slowly clawing its way into the sunlight. But none of that would bring Amelia back. None of it would erase the silence she'd left behind. Sarah sat beside Duke. The grass cooled beneath her jeans, and finally let herself feel it. The heaviness, the rage, the ache for the ones nobody listened to until it was too late. Duke shifted, leaned against her. Warmth. Still here. Still fighting. The press came slow. First whispers in town, then local headlines, then the vultures from the city. Billionaire CEO arrested in double homicide. Halden's mugshot made the front page, but it was a photo of the muddy K9 that caught people's eyes. Duke, standing over the unearthed crate, eyes fixed like he was staring through time. They called him a hero. Sarah hated that word. Heroes don't come home shaking. Heroes don't carry the smell of rot in their fur or curl at night in a tight ball because something inside them still feels wrong. Duke wasn't a hero. He was just stubborn. And he listened. The orchard was quiet now. Roped off, sealed behind temporary fencing. Jules had left the state for good. Her name nowhere in the papers. No one needed to know she tipped the first domino. Sarah stood just outside the gate. Duke beside her, eyes scanning the rows of trees that still bled mildew from the rain. Some of the bark still bore scratch marks. His marks. She reached into her coat and pulled out the locket. They returned Amelia's body to her sister the week before. Quiet service. No press. Just a few kids from the school where she used to teach, each holding a sunflower. The boy in the locket. He was 10 now. He'd sat in the front row, staring down at his shoes the entire time. Sarah hadn't gone inside the church, but she'd waited outside. That felt like enough. Back at the station, a box sat on her desk, unmarked, no return address. Inside, a flash drive, a small velvet pouch, and a note. One line, "He made me watch." Sarah inserted the drive into her desktop. The folder held 3 video files. Security footage. From inside the estate. She clicked the first. It was Jules, walking down the hall outside Halden's office, holding papers. At first, nothing looked unusual. But then, just as she reached the handle, Halden appeared behind her. Close. Too close. His hand slid over hers, then her waist. She pulled away. The video ended. Second file. The orchard. Night footage. Halden pacing near the edge of the trees. Derek beside him, arms flailing. Halden calm. Derek shouting. The timestamp read just 3 days after Amelia went missing. Third file, dark, only audio. A girl sobbing. A voice hissing. "Shut up, or I'll bury you like her." Sarah slammed her laptop shut. The velvet pouch held 2 items. Amelia's engagement ring and Derek's rusted belt buckle. The trial was fast. Sarah testified. So did the techs. Reese. Even Jules under seal. The flash drive never made it into open court. Halden took a plea before it could. 2nd degree on both counts. 40 years. No chance of parole. He didn't look at Sarah once. But as they led him out of the courtroom, he glanced at Duke, and Duke growled. Low, deep, final. 2 months later, the orchard was sold at auction. Some developer bought it. Rumor was they'd build condos. Or maybe a retreat center. The trees would come down. Sarah went out one last time, before the crews arrived. She parked by the same fence, walked the same path, stopped at the edge of the tree where Duke first sat. It was still there, the faint scuff of paw marks, the place where rot had once spilled to the roots. She crouched beside Duke and whispered, "You did good." He leaned into her hand, and for a long time they stayed there, just breathing, just listening to the quiet. She didn't hear from Amelia's sister again. She didn't expect to. But one morning, a card arrived in her mailbox. No return address. No signature. Just handwriting, sharp and careful. Thank you for believing what everyone else ignored. Taped to the back, a photo, Amelia and her son. A picnic, smiling, alive. Sarah left the department 6 weeks later. Not because she was burned out. Not because of the press or the politics or the dozen speaking invitations that flooded her inbox. She left because some days, when she closed her eyes, she still heard the growl Duke made that morning. She still saw Halden smirking in the rain. And she didn't want to carry that weight in uniform anymore. So she bought a cabin near Miller's Lake. Quiet, remote, a place where people didn't ask questions, and the wind in the trees didn't sound like secrets being buried. Duke went with her, of course. His bed was the first thing unpacked. Winter came early that year. The first frost clung to the porch rails. Sarah drank coffee in wool socks and listened to Duke snore. Sometimes she thought of Amelia. Sometimes she thought of the hundreds of other cases that hadn't been solved. Bodies never found. Dogs that never got the chance to dig. But mostly she thought about trust. How easily it's broken. How fiercely it's earned. Duke stirred, tail thumping once. Sarah reached over and scratched behind his ears. "You still smell like mud," she murmured. And then she smiled, for the first time in months.